You want me to correct? Okay.
All right, we're in. Happy September 12th, 2020. It is Saturday. It's 4 o'clock. I got Jesse. I got Zach. I got a good life. So I wanted to talk a little bit today just about like remembering because 19 years ago today, I think probably in my lifetime was one of the most profound, like coming together days in our history. And it's sad that it takes something of like that magnitude to create like unity. Um, but I find myself, I was this morning, I was doing some work and I was just mindfully had the TV on and they had all these like 9/11 stories. And I was like, man, just glued to the TV, rewatching it, and just remembering that morning of like waking up. I was in base housing in Camp Pendleton and, I came downstairs and turned the TV on and I saw it and I was like, what is happening? And so then we rushed to the shop and then we just were all stuck to the TV. But I remember the day after, which is today now, the anniversary of the day after. Um, and there being this like sense of like coming together, like America at its best. And I just feel like we've lost our way. I'm not going to say that we've ever fully had it, but we've just lost our way. And so all this like we never forget, never forgotten, never forget all that. I'm just like, I think it's more, and I posted this, but it's like how soon we forgot, how soon we forgot what the purpose is. And anyway, this isn't going to be all doom and gloom. This is going to be some levity because that's why Zach's here. Anytime we start crying, he makes fun of us. And so then we cheer up and everything's better. But anyway, Jesse, I'm going to pass it to you just to say good day. It's Saturday. We leave in the morning. Are you ready?
I am ready, but not packed. So I'm mentally ready, mentally prepared, ready to go. I'm not excited about that long drive, but I am ready. And I also remember that day, the day following, and all we were being told over in Oregon is, hey, we're going to go to war. We're going to war. And that everyone was saying it, right? And part of me was like, oh, I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, right? Like, you know, but yeah, a lot of stuff changed. And I remember things changing really fast. And we're told, hey, if you want to go home on leave, you better do it now. So they let us all go early. And then while we were there, they were like starting to call people back, like it's time to come back. And everything happened real fast. All kinds of movements and trainings and stuff. So it was a very interesting time. I remember it pretty clearly. I know a lot of people joined the military because of this event. But it's interesting because you and I were already in, like we had just got in, like, um, and I remember being told by several people, like, "Hey, there's a war every 10 years. We're about due for a war, so you better be sure if you're serious about joining." And I'm like, "Whatever, man. Just where do I sign?" And sure enough, like, it was accurate. But yeah, we'll get into all of that. I am glad to see Zach. Zach is our not only ability but also technical guru. If Joe does all the work, but he's like his. Yes, that's true, Michelle. That's very true. Um, she is a packing Nazi, but Zach is kind of like Joe's coach on all things technical. So he's been very instrumental. So we're glad to have him.
Well, that's putting a lot of pressure on me. Or blame. Is blame the right word or is pressure the right word?
It's blame.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Anytime it would be a positive, any type of positive criticism or constructive thing heaped upon me, it makes me very uncomfortable. So it's
Yeah, it's
better if
definitely not coming your way. You're safe.
good. Okay, I feel so much better. I really do. I really do. It's compliments make me uncomfortable. So please just heap it on me. Just let me have all of it. I will absorb the negativity and spew it back positively. That's what I'll do. So we're just given like a Cliff Notes version of where we were at, or what?
Yeah, just because I don't actually know yours. I know everyone like talks about this, and so obviously
Right.
Jesse and I were together, but yeah, I don't know your
It was very different.
story.
It was very different than both of yours. I was a 2001. I would have been a second year theater student at Iowa State University. I remember distinctly the morning of what happened. I woke up. I was at my girlfriend's apartment, my college girlfriend at the time. I woke up and I walked out into the living room of her apartment just in time to hear her say, "What, again?" And I had no idea what she was talking about, but she was on the phone with her mom. And we turned on the TV just in time to see the first tower fall. And it was very surreal because we had no frame of reference. We're in Ames, Iowa, where the tallest building is maybe at the time 10 stories, so we have no real frame of reference for what's happening, and information was coming in so sporadically, but yet quickly. So we weren't really sure what was going on. If you remember, maybe 2 years prior, a small airplane had flown into one of the towers, like a 6-seater or something. It was someone had plane problems, and it didn't really cause a ton of damage, but it was still undoubtedly scary for everybody that was involved. So when we first heard airplane, we're like, geez, why are they letting people fly these little airplanes so close to these large buildings in downtown New York? And so it was really, it took a while for us to catch up to what was happening. And then right before I left for stage makeup class, the second tower fell. And then it was, everything changed. It was really odd. Throughout the day, things started to happen very quickly. A lot of university classes were shut down because they didn't know what was going on. People began to panic. You started to hear of, the Sears Tower at the time, which I will always call it the Sears Tower, never the Willette Tower, because that's un-American. The Sears Tower in Chicago was shut down. All these tallish buildings. The principal building in Des Moines, I think, was shut down, and I think it's like maybe 45 stories. It's not a very tall building by New York standards. And then everyone lost their minds about gasoline. We're not going to be able to get any gasoline. Just immediately, that was where their thought process went. Because I think once they realized that it was some sort of a terrorist act, they immediately thought, which deservedly so, it was that it involved the Middle East, and that somehow, for some reason, we weren't going to be able to get gasoline.
So it was 2020's toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. Except for, I could live without gasoline a lot more than I could live without toilet paper. That's my private time. That's the only time I can go away where the children won't bother me, is in the bathroom. I need toilet paper. So it was, we drove all over. I remember a friend of mine, Danielle Strait, and I were in a survey class for Film in America. And that night we were supposed to have class. It's like a 3-hour course. You go watch a film, and then you talk about the film from the previous week. And we showed up, and the class there was a sign on the door that said class canceled due to current events or whatever. And so we drove around looking for gas, and we ended up in, yes, always Marshall Fields. Yes. So this is so true. And you got to throw the Hancock building in just because it's a funny word. We drove.
Why is it funny?
Hancock.
Well, what's funny?
Don't act like you don't know.
Well, what's funny about it?
Hancock.
Did you learn about this when you were doing makeup class?
Stage makeup. Thank you very much. And
I think that first word is irrelevant.
I want to make sure.
Makeup.
Yeah, but I can make these eyes pop. I can.
How long did you work at Mac?
How long did what now?
How long did you work at Mac?
What's Mac?
Come on, man.
No, it's Mac. No. I'll bite.
It's like a global makeup store.
Oh, Mac Cosmetics. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think you'd be making a joke about such a serious thing. I thought it was something else. It's actually Ben Nye. Ben Nye is I still, as a matter of fact, in my closet, in my office, I still have a Ben Nye makeup kit from when I was in theater. I actually think I bought a new one for Halloween one year, but Ben Nye makeup is amazing, and it matches your skin tone perfectly. I can make these eyes pop. I'm telling you. Little eyeliner. Get rid of the bags under my eyes.
Guy liner.
It's beautiful. I'm a pretty man when I put on makeup. I can change everything. I do this for you, Elizabeth. It's true. Like I get off topic as quickly as possible, and it's only for you. If you weren't here, I would stay on topic all the time, and I would be professional. But for you, I also wear a comic book shirt because I know how much you love my shirts.
Yes, she does.
So stage makeup class. We went
Stage
it was
makeup.
earlier in the day, and then we drove. I think we ended up in like Huxley, Iowa, population 7.5 to get gas because we didn't know where all the places and names. People were lined up around the block. There was plenty of gas. We never ran out of gasoline. Never ended up being an issue. I think it went up. Now I wonder if Elizabeth legitimately knows Ben Nye makeup.
I
Because it
have
really is
no
very
doubt
good.
about it.
Yeah,
I have
it's very,
no doubt about it.
very good makeup. Very good.
She
It's
does not lie.
little pricey, but it's good. It's good stuff. So it was a weird day, and then what compounded it was being involved in a theater program. And at the time, strangely enough, I was much more conservative leaning than I am now. Like I lean pretty far left, especially for being in law enforcement. But at the time, I leaned pretty far right, and my entire perception of what was happening was very different than what it would have been now. So, it was, I distinctly remember we're having a discussion, so that everyone could get their feelings out and their fears and all this, because it's such a terrible attack on American soil, something in our generation we had certainly never seen, aside from like the Oklahoma City bombing, which was very different. But we were sitting around talking. I distinctly remember asking someone in my class when they were like, "Oh, war is bad." I just distinctly remember asking, "Well, what should we do? Just fly a plane over there and drop teddy bears on them?" And like, it was just so weird because we were all dealing with such strange emotions because we had absolutely no frame of reference for something of this magnitude, and we all felt very unsafe because it was always, you live in the United States, it's the safest place in the world, no one can touch us here, and we got touched hard.
Yeah, I think you make a good point too, though. It's pretty profound to think about that long ago, that like essentially you sat around and had a listening session, which we know that there's power in group, and like what can happen when and this is like just great advice for any leader out there too. Like if your team is struggling, if your shop is struggling, if your employees are down or just worried, like bring them together and have like an organized listening session. I mean, just allow people in a safe space without judgment to say what they're thinking, what they feel. And then like preferably you would have some level of training to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, it's super important that people have a voice in their places of employment or in their places of education. And it's not just at home, because also at home, people are not equipped to deal with listen sessions effectively. It's the intimate relationships are the most difficult ones to effectively communicate in. And so it's a good place to practice it actually in those other spaces. But anyway.
Well, and in addition, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to like, every few minutes we should say something so where there's an actual like point.
Right. Well, and additionally, the nice thing about listening sessions is if you're at home, a lot of times with your family or with your friends, your small cohort groups, right? You're surrounded in an echo chamber. Like everybody thinks the same thing, believes the same thing, feels the same thing in a lot of situations. So if you are at work or school or wherever, and you're surrounded around people that you don't normally spend all of your free time with, now you start to hear different points of view. And I think that's one of the things. It's crazy because you can draw a lot of parallels between 9/11 and the COVID pandemic, because there were two things that we had no frame of reference for, and we're not prepared to deal with emotionally, right? The thing that we did better at the time of 9/11 was everyone was scared. Right. Everyone was impacted to varying degrees, but then people sat around and talked about it, and it brought our society together. I've never seen Americans stand so closely together in my lifetime. Granted, shorter lifetime than anyone who was alive during World War II or whatever, but I've never seen Americans come together as strongly and compassionately and cohesively as they did following 9/11. It was politicized to a point, but not nearly as much as COVID pandemic is now. And the thing that we're seeing, because we're not really having those listening sessions, we're having internet screaming at each other sessions, right? So people aren't listening, they're not hearing, they're not able to process like other people's points of view. And now there's no healing. Like it's just a bunch of people mad at each other and yelling.
It's interesting that the world's a lot smaller now than it was then. And the way we communicated was very different, right?
Right.
And all of us were watching a TV screen. when that was going on, everyone was at their TV. And I will say this, it's interesting, right? You talk about how like you've kind of switched your spectrum on politics, and I think, I don't know if it's representative or not, but from what I've seen, that's very like Iowan, like that's like an Iowa thing. It's like a paradox of politics when I go. It blows my mind, but that's neither here nor there. Like, I mean, you can stereotype what a person looks like and then think that they're going to believe one way, and in Iowa to blow your mind, right? As opposed to in Texas, you pretty much know. You just pretty much know. But yeah, so I digress from there. But yeah, it was different, right? So then, when I teach my PTSD class, we talk about this thing called vicarious trauma. And, I tell people that for a person to go through trauma, they don't have to experience it firsthand, that it can be vicarious. They can witness it through some medium. And that was like a prime example. We saw numbers with PTS and PTSD skyrocket. But I often wonder what it would be like now with social media, what we saw, because we still had conspiracy theorists and some people made it, politicized. And I think the world was also, or a country was a little more balanced then. You could have an honest discussion saying that, yes, they were, Muslim extremists. They had this plan. They did this. They were funded by this. You can go back. And now just having that discussion or saying that word would offend somebody. And then it turns into like a firestorm on your social media platform where we said it, right? So everyone is super, super heightened sensitive and angry now. And what I do miss about that time, you're right, brother, is how unified we were. And there was nothing like it. I mean, people were thanking first responders, they were the highlight of the world, like everything, right? And then when you were talking, I was reminded of this time whenever Joe and I were sent to deploy, like our leave was ended, like, hey, you're getting on a boat, we're going to the Arabian Sea. It's time to rock and roll. And I remember, I imagine it was like an issue of maybe a special edition of Time magazine or something. And it was all about bin Laden, like all about him, like his history, like the things he'd done in the past, why he was a terrorist watch list, all these things. And I was like reading it like on the way to the flight, and my mom's waiting for me, before my flight leaves, and I have to go in to check in. And she's like, why are you looking at that? You're going to have to go see him face to face. Put that away. Like she didn't want to see it. Like she didn't want to think about it. But it was an interesting time. And I don't think anyone questioned, the means or motive then. It just was. And while, COVID is a completely different context and construct, everyone's opinion was a little bit more supportive of one another, right? Everything is so divided now. I wonder what it would be like now. I wonder if we would still be unified, because Joe said it takes something so detrimental to like bring people together. And Michelle just asked, how do y'all feel knowing that you were going to fight for the U.S., especially after being a terrorist attack in the United States and not just a normal leave? What was your mindset? I'll let Joe answer this too, but we knew that we were going to deploy. Like, well, as soon as they said, hey, you're going to 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, like you're with the grunts, your life is screwed. Like, hey, like you're going to leave. We just got back. You have this much time. You're a boot. You're nobody till you get on that ship. You go other countries, you do some real stuff, and then you come back and you won't be called a boot anymore. So we knew that was coming. But we were told, like, hey, it's awesome. You're going to train in some cool countries. You might do some operations that are pretty high speed, but you're going to go all these countries. You're going to meet women and get drunk. Like, it's the best part of being a Marine. We're like, hell yeah. That didn't happen for us. It was not Joe. Joe was like, I won't do that. I don't want to be a part of that, but I have to serve my country. So he did. But it was very different. Like we shot out like a cannon, brother. We went straight, stopped in Hawaii, got some gas. I think stopped in Guam, got some more gas, and we just cruised in the Arabian Sea. We went to Kenya because we were supposed to do some operations in Somalia when Black Operation Anaconda was happening, and then from there they brought us back to the ship. So a lot of stuff happened. But during that time, I think that was the longest time we'd ever spent in the water, and I believe it was over 100 days. Am I right, Joe? Like we spent in the water just on the middle of nowhere on the Arabian Sea. But I'll let you answer Michelle's question. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes. Specifically, when we first deployed after 9/11, it was pretty uneventful, because we did hang out off the coast of Pakistan, and it was I want to say it was over 120 days, but it doesn't matter. It was a long time. But we started doing these helicopter operations where you'd fly out into Afghanistan, take over an airstrip, stay for one day, then you'd fly back, get a hot meal, shower, fly back. And we did this like day on, day off, day on, day off. And it was relatively uneventful. Nothing bizarre happened. And then we come home and it was like, okay, that was cool. We survived war. I mean, no big deal. But as soon as we got back, it's like, all right, we're going to start training because we're going to actual war. We're going to invade Iraq. And I was like, yeah, right. And so a few months later, we ended up leaving. We go back. Now we're sitting in Kuwait in January of 2003. And I would say that as far as mindset goes, that's where like true resilience was developed. We got there in January of 2003. The war started March 19th of 2003. In those 3 months, we probably heard, okay, get ready. We're leaving tonight, maybe 15 to 20 times. And we also heard, stand down, we're going home next week. And so you're shifting from this mindset of like, okay, here we go. Like we have to get amped up and ready for war, whatever that means. And then like, oh no, something changed. President Bush is calling it off. We're going to go home. Okay, I guess we're going home. No, now we're going back in. And so to do that multiple times, I remember specifically, I was like, man, this is really messing with my head, because then either time you heard anything, you were really kind of apathetic to it. It was like, I don't believe it. Like, we're going. Yeah, okay. We're going home. No, we're not. And you just really became skeptical. And then when it finally happened, and they're like, no, we're actually going. And then we're in the back of Amtrak's and we're crossing the border. It was like, oh, damn, this is real. And then the rest is history. So, yeah, as far as mindset goes, it was tough. It was tough because they just kept messing with us. And then specific to what Zac was saying too, and what you were covering, Jesse, is, I think if it was two things. One, if it was just COVID and it wasn't political season, I think there could have been opportunity here for us to unite, even with all of the just financial tragedy and the businesses being closed and the mask wearing. And I think people could have come together. I think some did, but then with, the killing of George Floyd incident, that just like that was gasoline. And then coupled with quarantine and people being stuck in their homes. And then, then it's just been spiraling out of control since then. And now we just cannot find center. We're just having the hardest time finding anything to like anchor into of like having hope. And again, that's not me personally. I think just nationally, that's at least the feeling that I get. And I feel like it's going to continue this way until the election. And sadly, I feel like it doesn't matter. If Trump wins, it's going to cause problems. If Biden wins, it's going to cause problems. And I still think that we're 2021 away from like truly uniting again, or at least like resolving back to like some level of normalcy. So I don't say that as a skeptic. I'm an optimist. I want everyone just to like get over their shit and get together starting today and realize that we're far more alike than not. And if we would just be willing to share our honest story and talk to people and realize that we're all suffering on some level in some way, that can bring us together. So anyway, it's been long enough. Zac, go ahead and tell us something stupid.
Yeah. Do we really want to talk about something stupid? I think we're on a roll. I think there's some really good points to be made about the fact that it's so different now. And I think that the problem is there's so much vitriol and both sides are so intent on convincing everyone that they're different. Whereas in 2001, it kind of came across of this is something that happened to us. That's how it was galvanized. That's why there's so much support. I mean, I realize we're kind of looking at it through a little bit of a nostalgic lens, because there were issues. There were a lot of Muslim Americans were treated very unfairly, and there was some imperialist, anti-military sentiment, but for the most part, the idea was we are all Americans. We are all Americans. Not like it wasn't a situation that we kind of deal with now, which, well, we're these type of Americans and you're those type of Americans, and those type of Americans are bad and these type of Americans are good. It didn't really come across that way because the enemy, I don't even know if the air quotes are right here. So the enemy was over there, right? They were over there and they came over here and they attacked us as Americans. And so that was really leaned into, and that's where everything came to. And it's been very ham-fistedly attempted by calling COVID, different names and putting the blame somewhere, but none of that took, right? None of it caught on. So I'm afraid that even if, I don't know if I'm afraid is the right way to put it, even if had 9/11 happened now, I think if it happened in the same bubble, like the same cultural bubble that we're in right now, I think it would have had a very different result. I think people would still be arguing about who was the real victim and who was victimized more. And, it would be so silly, and it's an exaggeration, but in the culture that we're in right now, you'd have firemen arguing that their deaths were more important and cops arguing that their deaths were more important. You'd have, just because, and I just use that as an example because they're easily divisible, groups that like to poke fun at each other. But we're so divisive right now and we weren't able to pin COVID on someone else, no matter how hard they tried. So now it wasn't a them versus us collectively, and that's the problem. We don't have a collective right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, to your point, it makes sense, and it's also, in my opinion, it's not about like pointing out differences as much as it is like I'm trying to prove that I'm right. And people are not willing to accept the fact that being right doesn't necessarily exist. It's just your opinion. And and again, I know I don't think like a lot of people, but this is where I just love the idea of these brilliant minded Greek philosophers and, the Stoics and how they responded to things. And it's like everything can be really narrowed down into, is this in my control or not? But people, like, we have a bunch of bandwagon like hatred of people just wanting to join a cause to like just say like I'm fighting for this and that, and they have no idea why. There's no context, it's just, it feels good, it feels right. And because they're surrounded by a community of fellow haters of whatever, I think it gains momentum. And then finally, I think right now, again, with everything that's happening, COVID, pandemic, the racial injustice, all of it, law enforcement, I think people are confused. It's like people are craving an enemy and they don't know who it is.
Right.
And so they're flailing around looking for like, I need someone to blame for the way I feel. And it's like there's such a huge opportunity there that's just being missed because it's so easy to project out and blame other things, situations, circumstances for the way we feel. If we would just acknowledge the fact that like we are responsible for the way we feel, and then what do we do from there? So, Jesse, what do you got?
Yeah, well, you brought everything that I wanted to say back at the end, because I don't think that anyone cares about being right anymore. I don't even think that we're there. I think it's more like everyone has this belief or attitude that who cares what they think because they're so ignorant. Like that group is just stupid and ignorant. Like, oh, that like whatever they believe in or whoever they support, they're just morons. And there's not even like discussion anymore, because if people wanted to prove they're right, there would still be discussion. And I think more now than ever, people are expressing themselves through political memes, and these memes have no context. And people feel very proud of that they post this meme, and I'm right because I posted this meme. Haha. Anyone who sees it's going to know like that they're an idiot. I'm like, no, you're not. Memes lack context. Like they're great for comedy, and they're great for a laugh and for getting this good feeling, or getting different messages across. But in the realm of politics, I don't think it's a very good method of sending a message out on either side. And you'll see a meme posted, and it's like such a I think it just reveals more ignorance on a person than anything else. They lack so much context and detail, and people use it now more than ever. And these things are shared hundreds and thousands of times, and people think that illustrates what they believe. And I don't think they're trying to prove anybody right, man. I really think we're just at a time now where it's like, screw you for thinking that way, and I'd rather like block you or unfriend you and never hear from you again, because I'm gonna have more people that are not what I believe to be morons in this group here, and they're all on my page, and that's all they get to see. And there isn't room for discussion anymore, right? You're on these threads and posts, and you just see like just horrific comments at one another, and there's no room for debate. It's a lost art. Political discourse is a lost art. And then if you look at, no matter what news channel you look at, it's all agenda driven. All of them. There isn't anything about fact. I think facts are gone. Like, facts are in the eye of the person giving them to you. And that's just a scary time. And right now, you're right, Joe. I think because everything is so politicized, the opportunity to come together was lost. I think in the beginning, we all had that sense like, hey, we can come together. And over time, anxiety, depression, anger, we used to talk about this when building resiliency as you got to unplug, stay off the news, back off. And then we have just maybe a new generation of people that this is how they can communicate. They can't go out and mingle with people like they used to or do the things they want. Like, I'm going to use social media to like pound my opinions out to the world. And it's tough. And I think what's even tougher for cops, and this is when I'll support, you and I both know, right? Or you and Zach both know that a lot of officers, like, this is their identity. Like, it's their life. Like, they are so absorbed in it. And if you are in a political party, you're pretty much attacking my identity, my way of life. It's fuel to a fire, man. And who knows what else 2020 has in store, right? Like, Joe's an optimist. I'm a realist on the verge of pessimism, and who knows what's next, man? I really don't know. I hate to be that way, but tell us something good, Zach.
Well, it's almost like the world needs a group of people that can teach them how to communicate with each other better. Right? It's almost like the world is crying out to learn how to communicate again, because that's where the biggest problem is. You used to be able to have a discussion where you had alternate points of view without hating each other at the end. And we've lost our ability to communicate, which is why the three of us are here, right? And more people need to be willing to pick up that mantle and say, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to learn to be better to each other. And the first step of that is so many of the things that the three of us work together on. Active listening, empathy, genuinely caring about the people that you interact with, regardless of, it's not just I'm paid to be here, so I'm going to, help you. And that's where it comes full circle to this, what we're doing here. Because if we don't think that there's a legitimate possibility that difference can be made, there's no point in us doing what we do, right? So I haven't lost hope for humanity, but humanity needs help.
Yeah, no, and I want to address this specifically too. That's a great touch point, Zach, as far as how do we start moving to a better sense of community, what to help. I think first thing for me, this is, again, everything's my opinion that I say, but we have to first acknowledge like what changed and why is it different now? And I think there's one word that really sums all of this up. And let's see if you can guess it, Zach. On the count of three, tell me the one word. 1, 2, 3, go.
Empathy?
No. Good try though, man. All right. It's fear.
Oh,
that's where everything changed.
Yep.
Fear is what has ruined everything. Remember, again, Jesse, you 40 yet, Jesse? Jesse's 40. Okay. So I'm 38. Zach's like 27, but think about it. Even in our lifetime, when we were kids back in the 80s, right? Did your neighbor ever like come out and say, hey, don't do that? Or like, or hey, like I skipped school one day and my neighbor actually called my dad and told on me. We used to be able to like community parent. We used to be able to like have accountability within our own community. And I saw a study on this recently that, it talks about how with the invention of technology, yes, like Jesse said, the world is smaller than it's ever been, but we're more disconnected than we've ever been in the history of our time. You know, the square footage of our homes has gone up by at least 5 or 10x from what it used to be. Most homes 50, 100 years ago were like 600 square feet, 800 square feet. Now that we have these 3,000 square foot homes, of which you don't use but 20% of it. And so we create these we've created this bubble before the NBA did, before COVID did. We all, in our own families and our own individual dynamics, we had these bubbles, which really isolated us from a sense of community. Most people don't know their neighbors anymore. Most people don't talk to anyone outside of their own walls. Most people don't really engage with people at work outside of work. And so we're a bunch of just individual people that are just trying to make the most out of their own individual lives. And I think when that happens, there's this natural competing that takes place. And we immediately, because of what the sociologists referred to as the in-group and out-group, is we immediately rank people. And if you don't look like me, act like me, think like me, talk like me, then you're in the out-group, and that means you're a threat. So then I must dismiss you. I can't listen to anything you're going to say because you don't align with my beliefs and values. So I think accepting, and here's the big thing too, I think to answer that is like, own your own fear. Like, what are you afraid of? Why do you not let people into, like, why do we lock our doors? Why are we so safety concerned? Like, where's the enemy? Like, who's out there trying to get you? And I think we live in a world where we are on guard because we consume, again, 24/7 media cycle of like, there's bad in the world, there's bad in the world, there's bad people. And it really sells this narrative of people cannot be trusted and the world is dangerous. And I think we have to be very careful with that, because I think honestly, the world is a beautiful place filled with a lot of really, really good people. And it's just, again, memento mori, right? Like, embrace your death and let that dictate what you do and say and think. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
I agree with you a lot, Joe. And what you talked about earlier is from the Chicago School of Criminology, right? They refer to as social cohesion or collective efficacy, and that's the idea that a group of people care about their community so much that they would do those things. So sounds like you had a pretty good community that your neighbor cared to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah, and we can live in extremely small areas and we won't know our neighbor. Like, we won't talk to them. Sometimes it's like I see people wave, and I think that's pretty cool when that happens. But I also know, like, I'll hear people say stuff like, I saw someone with a political sign in their front yard, like, I'm done with him. Right? Or you see people like going and like you have all these security clips of people going out stealing political signs. Or I saw one guy who was like pissing on a political sign. The guy came out with like an airsoft gun and lit him up. And I mean, it's ridiculous right now, just madness. And it's all from fear, Joe, all of it. And our unwillingness to like want to know each other, like hate is stemmed from fear. Like, it's a direct driven thing. Like, why do people hate the cops right now? They're afraid of us. Like, it's all fear. We're afraid of getting this, this new virus that's going to maybe kill us or kill our family. It's all fear. Shutting down the economy, like everything. And then for people that have like completely different opposite views, like, I don't want to wear a mask. Like, I don't want to be told to wear a mask. And people are like, why would you say that? Well, like, their fear that it, of rights being taken away is like a domino effect. Like, everyone's afraid of something, and that's where it's all being driven from, sadly. How can we fix that? Wow. I think that what you're saying, Joe, is extremely important and kind of blew my mind right now. Is everyone has to look inside and reflect and really tell yourself, why are you afraid? And then beyond that, you have to be willing to listen to someone that thinks different than you. Validate, empathize. And if they're willing to listen to your side, great. But you can't expect someone to want to listen if you're not willing to do the same. And you hit it, Zach. It's true. Like, how can this happen? Well, we need to teach people how to communicate again. It's interesting. Joe was on a huge platform yesterday and was teaching people in the corporate world what de-escalation was and how to do it. Extremely smart people with a bunch of letters after their last name, and they're listening to Joe Smaro, and they're like, their mind was blown. and I want to say maybe 1,300 people registered for this event. And he was just talking about what he did in his day job. I think that you're right, Zach. People have lost the basics, and they need it. And who better to give them the basics than us, right? Because we could and we would. And I just hope that we get a chance to do it. I think good things are on the horizon. But if we all could take a step back, look at what we're afraid of and why, and then be willing to open up to look at people that are different and not, be spoken down to or talk down to someone else, I think that'd go a long way. But tensions are so high right now, I don't even know what's possible. I just don't. I'm worried. What do you got, Zach?
I gave up too easily, Joe, when you said fear and I said empathy. I gave up too easily, and I'm gonna take my place back, because what I don't know, because I'm not a smart enough man to know, is whether lack of empathy comes from fear or fear comes from lack of empathy. Because we have to decide. Now, granted, you have two, and I think Jesse was the one that brought it up. You kind of have two different types of fear, right? You have fear of something like COVID that's not tangible, and then you have fear of people. So if you separate the non-tangible fears, things like an asteroid hitting the Earth or COVID or things that are completely, outside of your control, and then you look at just strictly the fear of people, I think that the loss of empathy that our society and culture clearly is a victim of right now is the biggest problem, the lack of empathy. Because if you have empathy, it's a lot harder to be afraid of a person, because you're able to process the reasons that they do the things that they do, and be able to look at things from their point of view, right?
I love that you said that. Before it just came to me. I actually had an idea for a TEDx talk right when this all started, and it was breaking that up for people, because I don't think people know the difference between fear, anxiety,
Right,
anger, and then hate, right? Like I wanted to break that down for people and then offer a call to action with that. But then, everything got shut down, and I'll probably never have a chance to have that talk. But I love that you brought that up, because I agree with you.
Never say never, Jesse. Come on, man.
Well,
there's that realist pessimist. Nope. I got to hold this guy up, man. It's like my back gets heavy. I thought I got to drop my rucksack in the Marine Corps. I still got to carry this dude's feelings, man. Come on. It's going to happen, man. You just got to believe it.
And I hate to do this, because I am an eternal pessimist, but I agree with Joe. It'll come back. It's coming back. And if nothing else, we've learned clearly through Zoom meetings for schools and doing teleconferences and doing tele or web-based presentations. This is a workable semi-solution. It's not the greatest. We know that, right? We know that it's better to interact with people face to face, but I think the opportunities will still be there. The trick is getting people to realize, because they have to realize first, like, I'm not angry, I'm scared, right? Okay, now how do I fix that? And then that's where the communicators come in and be like, all right, great.
But it sounds like you're talking about emotional intelligence. And where do they learn emotional intelligence, Zach?
Well, through
nowhere.
Well, not currently, but where could they? Where am I here?
Well, yeah, but
right
yeah, thank you for that.
Look at that.
But no, thank you. And that wasn't even meant for a selfish plug. What I'm saying is we missed the mark. School. I know there are some schools doing this now. Yale actually created a wonderful program on emotional intelligence, and they use an acronym called RULER. Look it up. It's great. They do it in schools, and they're teaching these young school-age children how to become emotionally intelligent. To me, I think that is the single biggest skill set that one can develop, because as soon as you understand what your emotions are, understand, like the great Dr. Susan David says, your emotions are data. They're not directives. They don't control you and tell you what to do. They're simply there to communicate to you, right? It's the language of the subconscious. But when you can learn what they are and where they're coming from, then you can make better decisions. But the people who don't understand them, again, because if you have one coin and one side of that coin is fear or depression or worry or scared, what's the other side of that coin? The behavior side of that coin is anger and rage. And so these people will act out. They get very, very, they implode essentially. And it's because that is a better alternative than saying, you know what, I'm really upset, or I'm sad. I'm really worried. I'm scared. I'm feeling depressed. And so because that's not socially acceptable, I'm just going to be an asshat and be violent or with my words and just be closed off. And it's because I am terrified of feeling anything. And so emotional intelligence is such a huge skill set that needs to be developed.
So on a smaller scale, I mean, the best thing we can do is model behavior, right? And I think that one of the things, and I was just thinking about it right before you started talking about emotional intelligence, one of the things that, we talk about in active listening is emotional labeling, right? And so by modeling that behavior of actually verbally labeling the emotions that, and then coupling them with an I statement, you're making yourself vulnerable. You're showing people that they can feel the way that they feel and that there's value to their feelings, right? And this is going to sound a little hokier than I intended to, but as men, the more we do that, the more we show that it's healthy to be vulnerable and to label your emotions and to say, I feel this way and it worries me when, and it scares me if. Then we're modeling that behavior, especially given our current jobs, right? Because what does everybody think about us? Everybody thinks that we're just a bunch of, I use everybody loosely, thinks we're a bunch of racist, violent assholes that come out and only take this job because we want to do bad things, right? But if we start showing people, if we model the behavior and start saying, look, I was scared last night when that guy got out of the car, or I was scared when that guy came to the door of his jail cell, or I was worried that attempted suicide was going to be completed, or I was, on and on and on and on. We have to not be afraid to emotionally label and give it ownership, our own ownership of this is the way I feel, and I will say it out loud.
Yeah. Speaking of hokey, I want you to read this out loud, Zach.
Okay. Emotional intelligence plus the ability to think critically, converse comfortably, agree to disagree while delighting in our differences, respecting the range. All awesome things that as a culture we're terrible at.
Seriously, did that?
Yeah, very, very good. Very. I mean, it's slam dunk. That is a slam dunk.
And you got a new name, Z Bark.
That was my AOL Instant Messenger handle in 1997.
Of course it was. Your MySpace account?
Oh gosh, yeah. What was the sparkly rose and the music that played on automatically when it'd come up? Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I'm glad we have our dedicated 3 listeners, and they don't ask us questions because they just talked to us 9 minutes before we went live. So it makes it hard to keep going. One day this is going to be incredible. One day it's going to be massive, and we're going to have people asking all kinds of questions. And I have something to strive towards, Zach. We're not going to be able to keep up. I'm going to have to hire someone just to read the questions to us. Anyway, Elizabeth wants to know if you had a mullet.
In 1986, I did, complete with a rat tail.
I can't even picture you with hair at all.
Right. I used to have my hair thin. It was so thick and luxurious. I had to have.
We actually had 12 listeners, and we went down the rabbit hole. We went to 4. So I was watching. So that was awesome. But I think we should probably get back to 19 years later, I guess. So Zach, you mentioned my 2 favorite active listening skills, actually, and those are the ones that I say are the most important in crisis response. So excellent. Those are the ones. I think they're the most powerful. They're all useful. They all have their own place and how to use them, but those are the most powerful. Oh man, 19 years later. So I hadn't even there was a time in my life where I would look at the month of September and I'd see the few days and I'd be like, oh man, the anniversary is coming up. And I think this is the first year where I was like it's the 10th and someone mentioned something and I was putting up a WebEx meeting and scheduling it for the 11th. And I'm like, wow, man, boom, it had totally escaped me. And then I started seeing people's feeds, they were talking about what they did the day before. And it really, I really hadn't sat down for many years and really thought about what I was doing. I'd watch a lot of documentaries on it. I watched, movies, and around this time I'll kind of binge them and just like think about all the things people went through. And it was terrible, right? It was just a scary time. But it was I hadn't thought about what we were doing or what I was doing for quite some time until this week. I think it's really cool that we decided to do the show on this. But it's just sad that, not even 20 years later, it's so different. The way people, are just responding. And I also find it interesting, right, that people that we converse with now, like, weren't even alive when it happened. Like, that's just incredible thing, like that, maybe what Vietnam was like to us, like, well, we weren't alive when it happened, but it was like important in history and everyone talked about it. And I also feel like there's people that if it's brought up, like they feel like they're promoting fear, or maybe even promoting hate. And they're like, I'm going to stay away from it. And I hate that everything is so sensitive right now. Like, we just can't be united. And I really wish we could go back to that. And I think that's what we've all been like talking about, is getting back to that. And I'm looking at the time, and I guess I'll save what I want to say for the last of it, unless we want to bring something up. You guys got anything else before we wrap?
I got a little something I want to just say real quick, because I don't know if you're going to wrap with this or not, but I think I don't want this to come off as like it's like negative, or again, just like, woe is us. Like, there's hope. And Jesse and I are very, very fortunate, and Zach will be too, and he has been. But Jesse and I were very, very lucky to be in Louisiana last week, and we did that whole show last Saturday with Justin, and how great he was. I'm going to see if I can get him on here as a guest, Jesse. And as we were talking about this too, who would have been a perfect guest for today would have been Walking Bush Raugi. Anyway, we'll get him another time though. We'll have to get a translator, but he was one of the guys that was in the Marine Corps with us. Anyway, I'm so blessed that we have this video, and I was trying to figure it out, but because Zach chooses to live in Iowa and he's not my neighbor, I couldn't have him like come over here and help me figure out the audio output. And so we have a video that I'm gonna upload to our YouTube channel, and I'll share the link, or Jesse will share the link in the comments on this so that you guys can see it. But it was just so profound for us to capture. And again, big shout out to Justin Hagler and the church, and I actually did send the video to Zach, and so he texted me when he was only 50 seconds in. He was like, oh my God, dude, the lighting, the audio, and he, like, just geeking out on the tech side of it. But the message too is so powerful. And so I want to share that with you all so you can see it. And then we're going to post it on our channels. But anyway, that's what Jessica was referring to earlier, was that if only there was a 3-minute video for some hope. There is. And I cleaned it up. I put our logo and stuff in there. But anyway, I'm just super excited to share that, because that's a great demonstration of what can happen if you just spend a little time together. We come in as complete strangers. We're doing it again tomorrow. We're going to drive out there tomorrow. We'll be there Monday morning with a brand new group of 25 or whatever it's going to be, brand new officers that we've never met. Well, they're not brand new. They've been officers for a while, but they're new to our lives. We've never met them. And yet almost every time it happens to where, like, by Friday, they are just like, I want to hug you for a long time and be your best friends, because you just gave me hope and put purpose back into my like perspective of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So anyway, it's just really, really impactful. And so I will make sure that video gets shared and linked, but it'll be on our YouTube as well. So anyway, I don't know if that's where you're going, Jesse. Zach's holding his hand, so I'm going to go ahead and cut him out of this feed. So everyone say bye to Zach. He is no longer welcome. We got no audio, brother. See, I let him go too long.
Hey, there we go. Hold on.
Oh.
I'm back, baby. I'm back. You want to show it to him right now? I think we can show it to him right now.
No, not yet, because I added an intro and the logo overlay.
You fancy, beautiful man. Okay.
Oh yeah, you'll see it.
All right. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
It.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, that's perfect. All right, good enough for me.
Yeah, I'm super proud of it. I mean, I was proud of it when I saw the content, and he told us, "Hey, when you guys see this content," and he should be on the show, Joe. We owe him everything. This guy sent his people out, brought his camera crew, and he got down without us knowing what they were going to say. He sat down with the participants in the class, and I mean, it's an incredible video. If you want to know what Solution Point Plus can do, I think this is the best testimonial that we could probably give. I mean, we've heard a lot of mentors say that we should have one, but we never knew how to do it specifically or really found the time because we're so busy when we go to these schools. So we put them in writing on our website, but I don't think they do it justice. And this is it. And this is not just from one person. This is from like a collective in the class, different ranks, different perspectives, and they all talk about it. I'm very excited. Please watch it. And then Joe made it fancy. He really did. He added his little, sparkle dust on it, and but sadly we couldn't figure out how to get it to play through this medium. So it was a pain, but I think the best idea was put it on YouTube. We're going to share the link on here. We're going to post it to our Facebook page. We're just going to share the crap out of it. I think I'm proud of our company and what we did, and I'm proud of those officers and firefighters in Louisiana, and we're going to go back. Fun times coming up. But as we often do, Zach, let's hear your final thoughts on things, on this subject, or on things, period. What you got for us, buddy?
I think I touched on it a little bit before, but for me, the biggest challenge is some kind of a solidarity, right? Because where all the negativity, it feels like it comes from today, is that people can't just find a way to connect. And why can't they find a way to connect? Because they won't listen, and they won't process, and they don't want to share information anymore. It's about me talking at you and you talking at me, or me typing at you and you typing at me. And there's no accountability. There's no discourse anymore. There's no discussion. It's argument. And for those people that are kind enough to watch when we get up to shenanigans on here, the thing that I would ask of you is try to model that behavior. Try to be patient. Try to listen, and try to process the things that people are telling you, and don't take it personally, right? It's just like that scene in Roadhouse, baby. It's not personal, because even if people know you, they don't know what's happening in here and in here, right? They don't know, because they're not crawling around in your melon. They're not living in your heart. So you have to cut them a little bit of slack. And if you model that behavior, hopefully, my hope, even though I'm a pessimist and my wife gets on me all the time for always being doom and gloom and the worst case scenario and everything, I have to believe that if we model good behavior and we model good communication and we just start to listen to each other, that hopefully people will legitimately start to care again. And that's the best we can do, is just be good people and model that behavior, hoping that it's as contagious as the bad behavior is.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you for that. Thanks for joining us as always. So here we are, right? 19 years later, 19 years, one day later. And I got to say, I was super proud of being in the military when this happened, and everything that, we got sent to do, and everything that happened. I was proud, right? Manning the rails, coming home. It was a surreal experience. And I have to say that the profession of being a first responder was everything then. And I say it should still be today. And for various reasons, that is changing the perspective of that. And I hope that people can remember and think about the selflessness and the courage and the selflessness that it took to be a first responder on that day, and many days thereafter. And whether you know it or not, a lot of that still exists today. I saw a post that someone wrote, right? And like I said, a lot of memes lack context, but this one, while lacking context, still stuck with me a little bit. And it said something along the lines that a lot of people are listening to celebrities, movie stars, rappers, sports figures. That's where everyone kind of idolizes and listens to for wisdom. And you can find that misplaced or not. That's your opinion. But what I did recognize in this statement that was in that post was you saw no movie stars, you saw no rappers, you saw no athletes going up into those towers, pretty confidently knowing that they were going to go down, probably knowing that they weren't going to live through it. And even if one of the towers had fallen, first responders are still running towards it. I think that says everything that needs to be said about the first responder profession, both in law enforcement and firefighters. And I think we've forgotten that. So I want to honor those that we lost. I want to, I hope we never forget them, and I want to honor the profession. Conversely, if you are a first responder, particularly law enforcement, you are a law enforcement officer, and you are not living up to what those men and women did on that day, if you aren't living to the level of professionalism that they did, you should really consider why you're doing this career still. I think we all can do better, and that sets the tone for us in the higher standard. And I hope that people on both sides will remember them. And I hope that those of us that are in this job that are bitter, that are angry and don't want to do anything anymore and just see such a negative inside of the world, and they're have us against them mentality and just shutting down and are mad at everything. Think about those men and women and what they've done, and ask yourself, can you do better? Thank you as always for listening, and I hope you do watch the video that Joe's going to post because it's really masterful. Joe, what you got?
I got to unmute first. All right. That's beautiful. So mine is quite simple. I'm going to leave y'all with a quote, and then we're going to go. Make sure you look for that video. Share it. Please share it, because it really is, again, some might think like, oh, they scripted that. It wasn't scripted. We had no clue. I just got it on like Wednesday night. Anyway, here's what I'm going to leave you with. Growth is painful. Change is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. And I'm just going to leave that with you. Growth is painful. Change is painful, but nothing is as painful as being stuck somewhere you don't belong.
I feel personally attacked.
Well, you do with it what you want, buddy. I'm just throwing it out there for people. They can do what they want with it. I'm just saying it also, because here's the reality, right? And I was going to leave it. Dang it, Jesse, you had to say something. But I feel like there always needs to be like a story or a catch with this. I think, misery loves company. And if we're talking about healing, and if we're talking about hope, and I mentioned this the other morning on the Daily Gig, for those of you that don't watch the Daily Gig, watch it. Go to Jessica Smaro, follow her. But in life, really, things come down to two things, and it's peace and purpose. And peace is internal. Peace is for me. Purpose is external, what I do for others. And we have to have those two things mutually. We can't have one or the other. Or you can, but you're not going to be living a purpose life. And too many people are lacking peace. Too many people are lacking purpose. And that is an individual responsibility. So again, change something. It's uncomfortable. Yes. It's scary. Yes. But if you are somewhere you don't belong, that your company absolutely affects your personality. Your personal reality is what drives your personality. And so who you're around, who you're with, all that stuff plays a role. So what you consume becomes who you are. And if you want change, then do the uncomfortable thing and just be a voice of hope, because just like COVID can spread if you lick someone else's tongue, so can positivity. So be kind, be nice, love one another. And I just wanted to leave you with that visual. Thank you, Zach. Take care, my friends. Peace.